The body experiences the same way by thinking and imagining something that hasn't happened yet, but it will happen.
Okay, well,
and imagining something vividly from the past that happened. Sometimes our brains trick ourselves into thinking it happened a different way, doesn't it?
Yeah, but that's incidental. It's none of your business how it happened. In fact,
it's how to interpret it.
Exactly. It's your perception, right? So then the stronger the emotion you feel from some outer experience in your life, the more altered you feel, the more the brain freezes the frame and takes a snapshot. Well, now you're freezing a frame in the outer environment. But if you're truly in the present moment and you know exactly what you want, and you begin to teach your body emotion, start practicing opening that heart, it's amazing what happens. The moment that heart begins to open, we've measured this so many times, Lewis, on a scan, on a real-time brain scan. When the heart moves into this kind of rhythm, when you're feeling frustration, when you're feeling impatient, when you're feeling resentment, you are stepping on the gas pedal and you're stepping on the brake at the same time, and the heart is pumping against a closed system, and it causes an erratic beat. It becomes incoherent, and energy literally leaves the heart. Now, you no longer believe in your future. You can't put your heart into your future. You can't trust the outcome because there's no energy there. It's being used and consumed somewhere else, so energy is leaving the brain as well. But once energy starts to move into the heart, we've seen this so many times, and it starts to beat in this rhythm, like banging a drum or dropping a pebble in water, pebble after pebble. The heart begins to create a wave of energy right to the brain, like taking a big sheet and going like that. And then all of a sudden you see this wave, and the brain gets this rush of energy, and that change in brain wave patterns, that change, that wave is carrying information. And the person starts to get a very clear idea. They see their future very clearly. Now that energy is causing them to move into very coherent alpha brainwave patterns, which is the state of creation. This is when you no longer hear the voice in your head that's talking to you, that you listen to and believe is the truth.
I'm not good enough.
Yeah, whatever that is.
That's
called the default mode. It suppresses the default mode network, and the next thing you know, you start seeing in pictures and images. You start dreaming. And that's the imagination, that's the creative state. So now you start naturally imagining the heart is the creative center. We gotta put our heart into our future, it better be open and activated. So now when you start falling in love with your future, oxytocin is released in the brain and in the heart. Oxytocin signals nitric oxide. Nitric oxide signals another chemical called endothelial-derived relaxing factor. And just like when your sexual organs get filled with blood because you're aroused, the same thing happens here as it would happen somewhere else. And literally the arteries in the heart and lungs engorge, and now your heart feels full and it's thumping in order, and you're in the present moment. Now, once that happens, and it's beating in rhythm, the heart produces an external magnetic field up to 3 meters wide. Now, you're in survival, you're drawing from the field and turning into chemistry. When you get energy in the heart, it's causing a change in the brain, and all of a sudden it's resetting the baseline for trauma, and now here you have a magnetic field.
When you're a magnet of the energy versus when you're, I guess, reacting in a place of fear, anxiety, and stress.
Yeah.
Is that what this is saying?
Let me see if I can say this another way. There was a researcher out of Yale University that in the 1940s was studying electromagnetic fields around living organisms. And in the 1940s at Yale University, nobody was doing this, and he was a vitalist. He wanted to understand the unseen fields around living organisms. So he started studying eggs, all kinds of eggs. Chicken eggs, swallow eggs, reptile eggs, snake eggs, salamander eggs, there's all kinds of eggs. And he was using a magnetometer, and what he found was what 100% of the time, no matter what egg he measured, the positive charge was always at the head, and the negative charge was always at the tail. Well, if you have positive charge on one end and negative charge on the other end, you got an external electromagnetic field called the magnetic field. That's a magnet, right? What happens with human beings is every thought has a frequency. Every thought produces a chemical. So if you keep obsessing about your lack of finances, your lack of time, your lack of energy, lack, and those thoughts.
I don't have this, I need this,
What are the chemicals you're feeding your body? You're taking thought It's producing a frequency, and that frequency in the form of chemistry is storing that thought emotionally right in your second center. You feel guilty, you feel unhappy. The moment you feel unhappy, then you generate more thoughts equal to that feeling, which makes more chemicals, and you keep taking energy from the brain and storing it in the body. If you react to people in your life and you feel anger, frustration, whether it's traffic, the news, whatever it is,
Parents,
whatever, you're drawing from this field, this electromagnetic field, you're tapping that resource and you're making chemistry out of it and the field shrinks. So now, by doing that and living in survival, the body no longer is a magnet. So now you have very little energy in the brain. In fact, 5% of the energy is in the brain and 95% is stored in the body. Now the body's been conditioned emotionally. So a lot of energy in the body, very little in the brain. So in our work,
we want energy to be in the brain.
We want to move energy back up to the brain. So
what does that do when we move the energy from the body to the brain or the heart?
Well, this is a great thing because once it makes it here, it's going up, right? So we do these different meditations and these different techniques to draw that energy right up to the top of the head. Now, when this energy shakes loose and it starts to move, the sympathetic nervous system switches on. And instead of releasing energy out like you're being chased by a predator or you're having an orgasm, that same energy is going up into the brain, and the brain switches on and it goes into these very high frequencies called gamma brainwave patterns. Now the person has an arousal, but the arousal isn't fear.
Not an orgasm.
Well, in the brain.
An orgasm of the mind.
Yeah, exactly. It's energy that's being released into the brain, and you can only describe it as ecstasy or bliss. So the energy of guilt that was stored from thinking and feeling in the same way releases and it travels up to the brain and is going back. And when it reaches the brain, what happens? You get more energy in the brain and it begins to produce that external field. So you're beginning to create a field around your body.
You can imagine the future as opposed to staying in something from the past.
Well, once the energy's moved, you're going to feel pretty blessed in that moment. In fact,
so we can transfer guilt, shame, insecurities into bliss.
Oh my God. Yeah, we do it all the time.
Momentarily?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we do it all the time. And the amazing thing is that rush of energy that's moving into the brain is changing the brain's physiology and producing that field. Now you have energy to heal. Now the body is a magnet again. And it's as the energy moves up the spinal cord and it starts passing through those spinal nerves, and there's a lot of dynamics going on the body. That energy that was once stored in that one of those energy centers that's released is energy to heal, energy to create a new future. You're replenishing your field, and now the body becomes more of a magnet instead of an inert piece of metal with no charge.
Hearing a lot of people when they go through a breakup, they're like, oh, I lost myself in this relationship.
Because
now I'm refining myself.
They were changing in a way that kept the relationship safe.
Why do so many relationships do this in general?
Because nobody wants to tell the truth. If you sat down and said, let's get vulnerable. Let's sit down, let's open our hearts. I have a bottle of wine. Let's get vulnerable. Hey, I'm this. How are you doing? Like, what's really going on in there? Are you happy? And then be an adult. Like, you're unhappy, I'm unhappy too. You want to try to stick this out? All right, well, if I were to say, if I could get in my heart and I was looking at myself, these are the things that make me unhappy that I want with me and that I want to change. It's not with you, it's me, what I want to change. And the other person said, listen, I'm stuck. I'm stuck too, I don't know how to change. I'm doing this, I'm drinking more or whatever, I gotta stop. And it's important enough for me. This relationship is important enough for me that I'm willing to make the change, and let's figure out how to do it together. That to me. Or, I've done this, hey, I can't feel it anymore. I can't feel that feeling anymore. I think it's time to move on. I love you, but I've changed and I still love you, but I gotta go. I mean, it's just different. We don't have the same interests anymore. We've grown in different directions, and out of respect, let's do that together, right? So those relationships still stay fertile. They're still wonderful. You keep them alive, but they've transformed into something else. It's the not telling the truth about how you really feel, because it would make you vulnerable, and that may mean someone one-ups you, or you may get shocked or, rejected in some way.